The Young and the Restless spoilers shock, Tuesday full June 24, 2025. Even as Genoa City reeled from the shocking death of Damian Kane and the subsequent emotional fallout that continued to ripple through Chancellor Gardens and Newman Towers alike, another storm was gathering, not in the streets of Wisconsin, but in the cobblestone courtyards and opulent salons of a French estate where the city's most powerful had gathered under the guise of diplomacy, progress, and legacy. What began as a so-called unifying celebration was now curdling into confrontation, whispered threats, and suppressed rage. At the center of it all stood Kane, no longer hiding behind the fabricated identity of Aristotle Dumas, no longer pretending to be just another gracious host. The man who had once used names like armor now stood naked in the presence of those who had long suspected that the truth about his rise to wealth and power would eventually come to light. But it wasn't just the lies that disturbed them. It was how effortlessly Kane delivered them with a smile. The first blow came from an unexpected source. Sally Spectra, always sharp, always one step ahead of the curve, pulled Billy Abbott aside after watching the tension in the room coil tighter with each passing minute. Her eyes scanned the corners, the movement, the glances between enemies turned guests. Something didn't feel right. It wasn't just the oppressive opulence or the faint scent of danger in the air. It was the undeniable sense that everything was a performance, and Kane was the puppeteer. She leaned in, her voice soft but resolute. "You need to leave," she said. "You don't belong in this circus. There's something bigger going on, and if you're still here when it blows up, you won't walk away unscathed." Billy, ever the rebel and seeker of thrill, hesitated, but even he knew when Sally sounded like that, she wasn't just being cautious, she was being prophetic. Lily, meanwhile, was unraveling in silence. Surrounded by ghosts, by the weight of memory and regret, she could no longer suppress the past. A single sentence from Kane, "I'm just Kane now," unlocked something in her that she had buried deep. A conversation. Half a year ago. Damian had warned her. Told her that Kane was trying to disappear behind identities, behind aliases, behind masks that he wore for everyone but her. "One day, he won't even remember who he is," Damian had said. "And when that happens, Lily, you need to know who you are." She remembered laughing then, brushing it off. But now, standing in the gilded halls of a foreign empire built on lies, she realized Damian hadn't been afraid for himself. He had been afraid for her. The guests were beginning to sense it, too. That something was rotten beneath the luxury, beneath the floral centerpieces and imported champagne. Whispers became sharper. Questions more pointed. How had Kane built this empire? Where did the money come from? Why had so many powerful allies suddenly emerged to support his ventures? The Europeans murmured in French, Italian, German. They sensed blood in the water. And Devin Winters, already on edge, pushed the question out loud, for everyone to hear. "How much of this," he asked, gesturing to the wealth, the prestige, the false hospitality, "was paid for with someone else's life?" His voice echoed. His eyes didn't blink. "You're a fraud, Kane. And worse, you're a coward hiding behind stolen thrones." But Kane, ever the manipulator, didn't flinch. "I'm not Dumas," he said, his voice silk-wrapped in ice. "Not anymore. I've walked away from that name. It served its purpose. Now, I'm simply Kane. And I'm very proud to host you all. Though clearly, some of you lack the manners to be worthy guests." Victor Newman stood then. Slowly. Deliberately. The air changed. It always did when Victor rose. The room hushed. Kane's gaze met Victor's, and for the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty behind his charm. "We'll speak privately," Victor said. It wasn't a request. "There'll be plenty of time for that," Kane began, but Victor cut him off with a glare that had ended wars. "Now," he said. And Kane, knowing better than to push, followed. As they left the room, the silence they left behind was electric. Phyllis Summers wasted no time. She turned to Amanda Sinclair, who had been unusually quiet, almost calculating in her stillness. "Is he going back to Genoa City?" Phyllis asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and hunger for chaos. "Because if he is, I need in on this." Amanda didn't answer right away. She was watching the hallway where Victor and Kane had disappeared. Her silence wasn't hesitation, it was strategy. She wasn't done with Kane. Not yet. And if Genoa City was where the next act of this war would unfold, then she would be front and center. "He'll go back," she said finally. "But not as the man you remember. He'll return as a storm." Elsewhere in the chateau, a decision was quietly being made. Devon, Lily, and Damien, if he was truly alive and not just a ghost still haunting Lily's grief, were preparing to leave. They couldn't breathe under the weight of this deception any longer. Devon took Lily's hand, giving her the anchor she needed. Damien said nothing, simply nodding to Lily as if to say, "I'm still here. I still choose you." And then, as they exited through the vast maze that surrounded the estate, a hedge labyrinth both literal and metaphorical, they passed others who were still entangled in Kane's design, unaware that they were pieces on a board that was about to be overturned. And back inside, in the private study lined with dark wooden secrets, Victor Newman leaned close to Kane. "You think this will end with applause?" he asked. "You think you've built a legacy on lies and that we'll all play along?" Kane smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I think I've done what no one else had the guts to do," he said. "And I think you, of all people, can respect that." Victor's response was quiet but sharp as glass. "You've made yourself the most powerful man in the room. By standing on the graves of people far better than you. And I promise you, Kane, when the fall comes, it won't be quiet. It'll be an execution." Outside, the wind had picked up. The sky above France had begun to darken, not from nightfall, but from the weight of consequence. What was meant to be a celebration had become a reckoning. And every person who walked those marble halls knew it, something had been unleashed. Something irreversible. A secret exposed. A foundation cracked. Kane might have chosen to abandon the name Dumas, but the shadows that name cast would not let him walk away clean. Lily would not forget. Amanda would not forgive. Victor would not stop watching. Devon would not let it rest. Damien, if he truly lived, would not vanish again. And Billy, if he heeded Sally's warning in time, might just survive to tell the story. But Genoa City was waiting. And Kane was coming home. The question was, would he make it there alive? "Let me know if you'd like to continue from here." Amanda's plan for revenge, Victor exposing Kane's crimes, Damien's secret alliance, or Sally and Billy breaking the story to the public. This can evolve into a full arc across multiple dramatic chapters. The wine was flowing, the French air was still sharp with tension, and the glittering chandelier above the drawing room felt like a trap waiting to fall. In the aftermath of Victor's quiet but stern confrontation with Kane, whispers had begun to pick up momentum. But it wasn't until Jack Abbott pulled Billy aside that the pieces truly began falling into place. Jack had been watching, assessing, cataloging Kane's every move from the moment he arrived. And now, with a brow furrowed and a voice low enough to avoid eavesdropping, he asked a question that lingered in Billy's ears like an echo. "You know what I noticed?" Jack said. "I didn't recognize his voice on the phone last week. He doesn't even sound like Kane anymore. That Australian accent, gone. Not faded. Erased." Billy blinked, processing it. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I thought I was imagining it." Sally, standing nearby and never one to miss an undercurrent, tilted her head. "How do you even know Kane?" she asked Jack, suspicious but intrigued. Jack sighed, the kind of sigh that carried years of tangled history and regret. "Because this isn't the first time he's done this. Changed his identity. Lied to everyone. He came back years ago claiming to be my long-lost brother." His voice darkened. And my mother believed him. Billy's eyes sharpened. Jill. She still loves him like a son. Of course she does, Jack replied, bitter. Jill always did have a blind spot for charming liars. Sally leaned closer, whispering, so why go through all this trouble again? What's his endgame? Billy's voice lowered. Chancellor. I think he wants it, all of it. That company was supposed to be about family, legacy. He wants to erase the rest of us from it. But Jack wasn't satisfied with that answer. He leaned against the mahogany bar, fingers tightening around a glass he hadn't sipped from. It's bigger than Chancellor. Chancellor is just the tip of the iceberg. Suddenly, Billy's eyes lit up as if someone had flicked on a switch in his mind. Catherine's will, he breathed. What if all of this goes back to that? What if something was changed, hidden, manipulated? Jack gave a dry laugh. Well, if that's true, then the mustache will be thrilled to gloat. He always thought it was absurd that Catherine left Chancellor to you. She wanted Kane to run it, Billy muttered, still stunned by the possibility. She told me that before. That she believed in his vision. Jack arched an eyebrow. But was it her vision? Or his manipulation? Before Billy could respond, Phyllis Summers sauntered in with her usual flair for drama, looking like she had just stepped out of a noir film. Did someone say Chancellor? She purred, zeroing in on the one word that always spelled opportunity. Diane Jenkins, seated with a glass of white wine, didn't even look up before firing back. Could you be any more shameless, Phyllis? Sally, annoyed by the sudden surge of attention, pulled Billy away from the gathering and into a quiet alcove near the terrace doors. We need to leave, she said firmly. We're going back to Genoa City first thing tomorrow. Billy looked at her, torn. Sally, no, listen to me, she insisted. This is our story. Abbott Communications launches next week. This is how we make our entrance, blowing the lid off the Dumas deception and what he did to Chancellor. No one else has this. Not Newman, not Jabot, not anyone. But Billy shook his head. It's not that simple. Too much is happening. Too many pieces still moving. Sally crossed her arms. Then we stay just long enough to finish what we started. But if you wait too long, someone else will beat us to it. Victor. Phyllis. Amanda. I don't care who it is, but they'll steal the scoop out from under us. And Kane will disappear again. Back in the dim corridors of the chateau, Lily was uncharacteristically quiet. She sat in the private train car that had been reserved for the departing guests, her reflection trembling in the glass as the lights of the estate flickered behind her. Damien sat beside her, watching closely, while Devon stood at the entrance, arms crossed, as if guarding both of them from the world, or from Kane. If I had known, Lily whispered, if I had seen this coming, I never would have come here. I never would have looked him in the eye again. Damien leaned in, his voice barely audible. How did he do this? How did he afford this life? This empire? Devon's answer was sharp, factual, and immediate. His father, he said. Colin Atkinson. International conman. Launderer. Drug money, shell companies, stolen investments. He learned it all from him. But Kane always said he never wanted to be like his father, Lily added quietly. He swore he left all of that behind. And maybe he believed that, Devon said coldly. Until power started whispering his name. Lily turned her head slowly, looking out the window again. Then what does that make me, she asked. The fool who believed a ghost was a man? No one answered. Because no one could. Outside the train, as the estate grew smaller behind them and the sharp night wind rolled across the French countryside, secrets continued to fester. Billy was on the verge of something massive, but Kane was already playing his next hand. Victor wasn't done with his threats. Amanda wasn't done with her exposure. And Devon, who had once fought Kane for both legacy and love, now stood more resolved than ever to take back what had been stolen under 1,000 false names. And yet, the most dangerous storm of all wasn't in France or Genoa City. It was in Lily herself. Because for all the tears she had shed, for all the heartbreak she had endured, there was still a part of her, the part that Damien had tried to protect, that was ready to rise. Stronger. Colder. And far less forgiving. As the train moved toward Genoa City, carrying the truth with it, the game was far from over. It was just evolving. And when Kane returned, because he would return, he would find a city no longer asleep, no longer seduced by charm or wealth or sentiment. He would find enemies he didn't expect. A press corps he couldn't bribe. And a woman, Lily, whose love he had abused for the last time. And when she faced him again, it wouldn't be as the grieving ex-wife. It would be as his reckoning. Let me know if you'd like the next chapter, Billy and Sally's explosive expose of Kane's crimes, Victor's plan to trap him in Genoa City, Amanda's alliance with Lily, or a shocking twist involving Catherine's will. As the train rolled deeper into the French countryside, silence hung thick in the private car shared by Lily, Damien, and Devon. Lily sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes locked not on the scenery, but on a memory. One that refused to be silenced. It hadn't always been this way. There was a time, not so long ago, when Kane still felt human, when the years of betrayal hadn't yet reshaped him into a stranger. The moment had come during a quiet crisis, one no one else had known about until now. Maddie had been in trouble. Not drugs or crime or anything salacious, but a deep, emotional crisis. Something cracked in her after returning from school, something no parent could fix with a simple conversation. And in that rare moment of shared concern, Kane and Lily had found themselves at the same table, same breath, same heartache again. After days of navigating the fragile terrain of their daughter's pain, they had sat across from one another with coffee between them, hands shaking from exhaustion and relief. It was during that exhausted haze that Kane had admitted something she had never expected to hear. He'd reconnected with Colin. "He's changed," Kane had said, his voice quiet, almost childlike. "He's sick, Lily. Really sick." And it changed him. He wanted to see the kids before it was too late. But Lily's answer had been firm, and her voice didn't waver. "He tried to steal from Devon. He tried to con my family, our family. That is not something I can forgive. Sickness doesn't erase what he did." And just like that, the warmth between them had evaporated. Kane had nodded, but something dark had crept into his eyes that day, a frustration, a sadness, and perhaps even a spark of resolve. A seed was planted. And Lily, sitting now on this train with two men who wanted to protect her, realized that it had been growing ever since. She turned to Damien and Devon, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't understand how he could be so naive. How could he believe Colin changed? How could he go from that to building an empire behind our backs, pretending to be Aristotle Dumas?" She shook her head. All this time, he was doing it. Secretly. And now he's standing in a castle acting like he earned it. Damien looked to Devon, then back at her. "We need to go," he said carefully. "This isn't our fight anymore. He's exposed. Let Victor handle it." Devon agreed. "You've done enough, Lily. Come back home." But Lily's stare hardened. "I can't leave. Not yet. He's coming back to Genoa City, and when he does, I need to know everything he's done for the last 6 years. Every lie, every deal, every betrayal." She paused. "I don't want vengeance. I want the truth. I want to dismantle the mythology he's built around himself." Meanwhile, in the moonlit garden outside the estate, Kane stood with Victor Newman, who had requested a second conversation, this one away from watchful eyes. The air was crisp, the stars sharp against the velvet sky, and the chateau loomed behind them like a fortress built on delusion. Kane looked out over the manicured hedges and marble fountains with satisfaction. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, his voice carrying the pretense of a gracious host. Victor wasn't having it. "Cut the bull," he snapped. "Tell me what you want from my family." Kane turned, that familiar smirk playing at the edges of his mouth. "Nothing but respect." Victor stared at him with disdain. "You know what this reminds me of? Your father. Colin would have loved a place like this. He would have put on quite the show." There was a flicker of emotion in Kane's expression then, not rage, not pride, but something closer to pain. "He's dead," he said. 6 months ago. Died in Fiji. Quietly. No headlines. Just gone." Victor's expression didn't soften. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said, though there was little sincerity in the words. "But that doesn't answer my question. How many people did you and your father swindle to build this fantasy?" Kane looked down at his hands, then back up. 6 years ago, after he was diagnosed, we started talking again. And despite everything, I listened. He was different. Slower. Tired. But sharper in some ways. He started investing small amounts, what he had left. I did too. Cryptocurrency. Real estate. Offshore trade. It grew fast. We didn't cheat anyone, not directly. But we weren't saints either. Victor raised an eyebrow. "You weren't saints?" "We found opportunities," Kane said. "And we took them. That's all." Victor gave a dry chuckle, then leaned closer. "Well then, I salute you. To build something this massive in such a short time, most people spend lifetimes trying. But my question, Kane, is this: why am I here? Why drag all of us into your fantasy?" Kane's face grew solemn. "Because I'm ready to walk away. From all of it. The Dumas legacy. The secrets. The lies. The empire is forfeit." Victor narrowed his eyes. "Then what do you want?" Kane smiled again. "You. I want you to take it. Fold it into Newman. Clean it up. I know you like a good acquisition. This one's already built, and it's globally profitable. And you just hand it over?" Victor asked, incredulous. "I'm tired," Kane admitted. "And I want to go back to being me. No more aliases. No more shadows. Just Kane." Victor studied him for a long moment. Then he said, "You think this absolves you?" "No," Kane replied. "But it sets me free." Victor didn't answer. He turned and began walking away, his silence more loaded than any judgment. Behind him, Kane stood alone, a man haunted by ghosts no wealth could silence. Back inside, the guests continued whispering, but no one knew that in one private room, a laptop had been opened and an old document retrieved, Catherine Chancellor's will. Billy, now restless and fully consumed by the implications, had finally cracked it open again. "Something doesn't make sense," he muttered. "What if this isn't the original? What if Kane changed something?" Sally leaned over his shoulder. "If that's true, then we don't just have a story. We have a war."